Well, once again, thank you all. Appreciate everybody being here this evening. We're going to have a quick conversation about our diaspora and the various contexts. Vinitaji, you mentioned about the sandwich generation, and from an advocacy standpoint, what your generation did for us has been awe-inspiring, and it's on the shoulders of your success that we continue to leap towards that faith of making sure that we continue to be the model minority in this nation, and our children continue to hold on to everything that is so sacred about our Indian American origin. And that is aspirational, but it's certainly a goal that we think is in sight. We're going to have a quick conversation about some of the issues that we think are important, and this panel was handpicked for one very specific reason. Obviously, Sudhakar, through his technology, innovation, his success in corporate America with startups, and now in publicly traded companies. And then we have Anurag, Mairal, a professor, and the many things that he does in the world of biotech. But more importantly, many don't know that as a part of the Knight Hennessy Foundation, the scholarship students that he takes to India, every year he's hoping to have this generation of thinkers who look at the role of how India is perceived and this perception. So this question that I'm going to pose, and Khanderao is here with me as well, we're going to tag team a little bit upon this, but this is a question for both Muddu and for Professor Anurag Mairal. Our community, and to Vinitaji's point about the comparison to the Jewish American community, many have said that we are a model minority. But off late, there seems to be this questioning of our existence. And then we want to talk a little bit about immigration. We want to talk about how the role of this US-India partnership is consequential. But where along do you think, in your individual observations, is our Indian American community perceived today? We'll start with you, Muddu.
First of all, I really enjoyed, ma'am, your talk about this, so congrats. I'm also went to UCLA, so that was good. Right. So look, my view, I'm an entrepreneur, guys, so I'm very positive. I think glass is half full. And this is where I probably disagree with madam, that our next generation is not connected. I came to this country in 1990, she came I think 1970 or 75. So I think the view of the world is our generations, our next generations are much more tuned to the society than when I came to this country. So I don't have the view that our kids, and I also have two kids, one daughter and a son. I think the society is positive. The way in which at least I see the world that's happening in the tech world, the Indian community is a lot more in the politics, a lot more in the society, a lot more in every area of the thing. So I think the glass is much more than half full. So it's going to like every area of the Congress. When we came there was nobody in senators, congressmen, nobody in the policy makers were there. So all the things that Khanderao, you're doing it's actually getting there. We may be thinking that our own immediate people that we interact with may not be there, but we as a society that Mr. Srikar talked, which is like we have 5.4 million people, there's enough people are going there positive. I think the bigger question is not the next generation. I don't think we have a problem or not, I don't know. I'm a solver, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an executive. So I look for how to solve it. I think the bigger picture that we need to solve is the way in which we see the world that I am seeing it is it's very reactive. What do you call the group India entrepreneur group that Khanderao you're talking about, we react. If some problem happens in Trump versus India or India versus this, we react. We are a very reactive group here. If there's something we want to learn from the Jewish communities or other communities, let's think proactive. We don't even have the fund for FIIDS group. Like if I were you guys, I will create a venture fund. Like the Bay Area schools, like there's a schools in Bay Area, in Cupertino, San Jose have a venture fund. Right? They're funding their high school people. We have people dropping from high school to create companies, right? This is Silicon Valley. How come Indian corp does not have a fund? The fund should be for policy makers. Like if I were you guys, like you're talking about Mr. Khanderao, every year he calls me, we'll do the best we can. That's not how it should be. We are talking about 160K budget. Like we need to do something like, or even this program, nobody should be allowed here unless you pay $1,000 or something next time. So next year, nobody comes here without $1,000. Right? I mean, otherwise you don't want those people. Like I don't want to come on a Saturday, pay $10 into the entry fee for this, right? I want to pay you $1,000, right?
Right.
That is what, look, where I'm going there is, there are problems we need to solve. First thing is create a big fund, right? All of us. Then the money should be spent. Remember, I want to give you a few things before the important thing we should do is, we need to solve for that government that's running. Today, whether you like it or not, it's a Trump government. We are not doing a good job to show how India is helping the US government create jobs. That's his mandate. He won the mandate for next 4 years. So we need to show how US and India, that symbiotic relationship can help his policies. It should help India policies too, but we are here to help US. I'm a US citizen now. I want India to do well, but first primary goal for me is US citizenship. I'm not an Indian citizen, I'm a US citizen. So we need to figure out, this group should talk about how it's helping current admission policies. We don't talk about that. That's on the job side, right? US jobs, the jobs are happening here. Second, we need to create case studies to how the community is doing a good job, right? It's our job to highlight to the congressmen people, including to Khanderao, our congressman, right? He talks many times as if Indians are not doing a good job. He is our Congress guy. He is an Indian origin guy. So it's burden is on our groups to showcase. Remember in tech we call it case studies, right? Every company, even OpenAI creates a case study. Why is it good for you? Why is it an ROI, etc. If OpenAI has 1 billion users and still trying to advertise itself, that Indian group with 1.5 billion population, we need to advertise how our 5.4 million people in US are doing a good job in US.
No, that's a very good point. And to carry off on that, Anurag and Muddu, yes, absolutely, your point is very, very valid, and we'll get to that. Sure. The policy of this discussion is there are no right and wrong answers. The question as a part of our internal reflection is that there are certain viewpoints that we bring to the table. Half the time, we even come to a disagreement on how to solve the problem. And to our point as Indian Americans, Americans first, with a deep love of India, we are often divided by our profession. We're often divided by what part of India we're from. And we're often driven by a difference of our priorities. And I can tell you, when we go to members of Congress, they're confused. They'll ask us, what part of your Indian American community do you speak about? Because I have many people who are going to come and tell me something that is diametrically opposite. But Anurag, I pose the question next to you. We are a model minority. The Biden administration promised us that. I'm a Democrat, full disclosure. But I break bread with Republicans as well. But Anurag, I believe there's a current sentiment, and while I'm aspirational about America's greatness and the role we're going to play, it is a very sensitive time. From your observations, as a model community today, if X is an indication of where the world sees us, bots included, how do we turn from a model community to a community that is under attack, one would say?
Yeah. No, that's a great question, and this could actually be a debate that could go on forever. It was very interesting with as you were talking about it. In one breath, I was agreeing with you, and then another breath, I don't agree with that. So I kind of kept on oscillating between I agree with you, I don't agree with you. And I actually agree with what Vinitaji said about the disconnect we feel. And I am also an optimist. That's why I'm part of an organization called SAVE. I'm a professor. So I do have to see the future is bright. Otherwise, I wouldn't be educating minds. But I think we live in a very different world today than we did 30 years back or 50 years back. And I think the challenges that we deal with, I think you talked about what problems are we trying to solve. You're a problem solver. The first step in solving a problem is knowing what problem we are trying to solve. At Stanford, I'm part of a center called Center for Biodesign, which is a needs-driven innovation. So the first and foremost, we need to have a clarity as to what problems are we trying to solve. And if you go by what is happening today, which is very tactical, very a moment thing, with the current sort of X debates on the X or the anti-Indian hate that you're seeing it may be a momentary thing, but it also is reflective of the changing world that we are in. We are actually becoming far more balkanized, fragmented, localized, if you will. There's a backlash against globalization. And right about the time when Global South, India is part of it, needs to be actually benefiting from that globalization. So, and then Indian American community kind of, you talked about sandwich generation, right? We sort of get stuck in between. What are the problems we are trying to solve for our community and for America as a whole and for the world at large? So that's kind of my
Anurag, perfect. And really the purpose of this is to come back and show that while we agree on many, our way to the solution is different, and that's what Khanderao, the Foundation for Indian Diaspora Studies, does. That collectively, how do you bring the hopes and aspirations of a South Asian community and Indian American community, and one could make the argument that which is majority Hindu, and somewhere we get caught in that dogma, that are we in that box or not? But let's take this now to just a foot forward. Yes, and I do agree that President Trump was a phenomenon that came out of the hopes and aspirations of a country that wanted fundamental change in government. But that's to our point that we need to forge bipartisan relationships that transcend Democrat and Republican and our ability to speak to them. But at the same time, and I want to get to the question of immigration, but I do think that when we sit in Silicon Valley, we talk about startups, we talk about wealth generation, we talk about critical technology, we talk about quantum, we talk about the impact of AI. But when we go to South Dakota, when we go to North Dakota, then the conversation about immigration, legal immigration, is very different than H1 to allow Indian Americans to be at the forefront of helping America beat the China hegemon in the Indo-Pacific, in which India plays a critical role. So let me pose the question about immigration. We talk about immigration and legal immigration, H-1B, H-4s, EADs, the long pathway to citizenship, which is modern-day servitude, children aging out, but they're not dreamers. They're devoid of those opportunities. So let's talk about immigration for a moment. I'm a believer that H-1 was the fabric of Silicon Valley. But have we ever contemplated what somebody would say in Gary, Indiana, or Indiana, where some of our biggest, largest firms are providing services to some of the largest corporations in the world? Are we be seen as STEM contributors to AI computing and the prowess and Y2K and the symbolism of what Silicon Valley led to? And how do we respond to a member of Congress who comes from Idaho or a member who comes from West Virginia? When we talk to 123 members of Congress, how do we speak in a way, as Americans, we recognize that H-1B does need reform? There has been a lot of fraud. But how do we leap forward, Muddu? How do we convince America that H-1Bs are good? And Trump saying, I want $100,000? Well, why not pay $100,000 for deep scientists that banks will pay $5 million payouts for?
I have a lot to say, guys, on this. So, okay, I don't know if the audience want to enjoy all of this or not. There's food served at the back. If you're boring you guys, we should stop talking and enjoy the food.
No, let's not go to the food for 10 minutes because this conversation will show the disconnect we face in Washington, D.C. Members of Congress who think diametrically opposite to Rose, Sam Liccardo, Eric Swalwell, Nancy Pelosi, Jimmy Panetta, and Congressman Kevin Mullen, Garamendi. They are competing with GMT. They're competing with members of Congress from Deep Red. Coal towns are being eroded. Historical black colleges, they're losing their basic survival of funding because the oligarchy and tech seems to have created income inequality. So while I'm an optimist, help me go advocate on the Hill that we speak with one voice.
I think, first of all, I think both of you asked really good questions. What is the problem we are trying to solve? We are not trying to solve immigration problem. That's the effect. This is the fundamental thing that we always look. I only think about entrepreneur. I'm not a policy maker. I don't understand the policy word. I don't know how to spell policy. But I think we are missing the forest and the trees here. The biggest problem is we need to make Trump happy about India thing. That's the problem we have to solve. Give him a Taj Mahal, invite him to Agra, ask him to collect a Trump hotel next in Taj Mahal. That's it. That will solve your problem. So stop debating it. The problem is there are only two communities in the entire world who talk a lot, Indians and Greeks. We need to stop debating and talking and do something about it. That's your problem. So there's nothing wrong with me. If it's a problem, it's always wrong. We will solve something else. What does our entrepreneurs do? You keep iterating on it. Invite him to India, ask him to treat him well, give him something. Even Apple CEO gave him a big golden plaque of the iPhone wafers. We should give something like that to Trump too. He is doing so much to the tech. Bitcoins are doing well. He and his administration really drops tech policies. So all you have to do is drive. He does not hate Indians. He does not hate tech policies. You just have to figure out how to engage every congressman and every Republican, whether Democrats or Republicans. I don't care. I'm not in either of them. I am for money party. I just want to make money. I want the society to be happy. I want people to make money. Look, we are way thinking wrongly. Immigration is an after effect. Because India and US could not agree on it, his administration may be taking something. That's my view. So you guys are thinking about the effect. Look at the cause. Cause is that tariff problem needs to solve. Figure out how to solve the tariff problem. Get both Prime Minister Modi and President and their parties to figure out. Then everything else will solve. Whether it's Infosys, Wipro, we call them witch companies. Anybody know what's a witch company? They're all those companies. Wipro, Infosys, called the witch companies. Right? I'm not interested for witch companies. They're called witch for a reason. They're making money for them. Right now, we need to worry about what can we do to solve the greater India-US bilateral problem. Tariffs is your number one problem. How do you make Trump happy about India-US? So that's the problem number one. That's it. Rest is will come against. So focus on the problem, figure out how it is. Now, as Khanderao talked about, I said as a grassroots on the policy, let's create a fund. The fund should donate money to lobbyists. Make sure you create enough case studies, highlight how US has done good job. I don't know all the congressmen and senator names you said. I don't know their XYZ, ABC, etc. But donate them enough so that they say good things about us. That's it.
That's right.
That's why Jewish people have done it for 2,000 year.
And Khanderao, before I let you, I would like you to chime in because as our leader on foundation.
He's always happy if you give him money.
No. Believe me, Khanderao is probably will say that while money is the mother milk of politics, having 200 delegates from all over the country talking to members of Congress across the ideological spectrum is important because capturing the hearts and minds of government. And Muddu, you may be a successful entrepreneur, and for me, entrepreneurship may be an afterthought, but I spent 40 years in American politics. Let me tell you, the soul is sold for the highest bidder. But from a politician's standpoint, you mentioned one name, I'll mention you a lot of names. Politicians will always come back and straddle with the popular sentiment in the community, and they'll find themselves to the point of relevancy. But just coming back to the moment, we don't need 400 members of Congress. And Khanderao, I do want you to chime in, because you and I have talked often about this. You really don't need 400 members of Congress. You just need 20 members of Congress on each side on armed services, on the Foreign Relations Committee, on the Commission on Energy, the defense, because clearly decisions impacted to our diaspora. ISAT, quantum computing, immigration, these are decisions. So let's start there. And money evolves, but I'll tell you a statement that Congressman Barney Frank, who I consider one of my mentors, he said, Yogi, I can always find money. There's special interest groups, there are corporate PACs who write me checks, deliver votes for me. I can piss off a donor, I'll find a new donor. I can't piss off a voter, I can't even tell them, move from Fremont to Union City, I don't like you anymore. So the power of boots on the ground. But Khanderao, we'll get to that point, but Anurag, back to the question. As a model minority, and we were compared to the Jews, let's be blunt, the Jews are being challenged in America today. A generation that believes that Israel's response to Palestine was not appropriate. I think it was. I think that when you're attacked, you do things, but America doesn't think that way. The influence of AIPAC was questioned and threatened. Today they're being challenged. So Anurag, you work with students at Stanford, you work with students at Berkeley, you work with students in India and the United States. You've met Prime Minister Modi in New York when he talked about education. To Vinitaji's point, are we losing a generation of children who, while they believe in the promise of America, fail because that's what Khanderao and I will want to focus on?
Yeah, I think we are. I'll go back to the point that I made, and again, it's not, I do think there's a glass half full part of it, but I think we need to acknowledge and face the reality. We are losing them, and we are losing them for a simple fact that I don't think we understand, our generation understands the challenges of America well enough. In this world of localization, opposite of globalization, everything is about bilateral relationships, and we're talking about US and India here. India has an unmet need, sort of an agenda. So does America, and America has a lot of challenges. I mean, there's a Midwest went through this major crisis when manufacturing left this country about 25 years back, to the extent that there is a major economic distress in many parts of the US. Along with that came cultural shifts and political shifts, ideological shifts. And the new generation, the next generation, whether it's Indian American or Jewish American or any other American next generation, thinks differently than we do. And we need to understand, we need to have our finger on the pulse of those folks. At Stanford, I saw that I had never seen in 20 years that I've been there. I saw encampments at the Stanford campus in support of Palestinian cause, which is not wrong by itself, but I also saw violence. I saw violence which I had never seen on the campus before. Why is that happening? I think we don't fully understand what actually makes this generation tick. And in some ways, we have, the loss that we are talking about, a lost generation that we're talking about, we are actually disconnecting from the generation because we are pushing a particular perspective which may not be anchored in their experiences and the needs of, so there are two things I'll say very quickly, and then I would love to hear what Khanderao has to say. Two things. Number one, we need to understand the needs of the communities across the US, and how does India become part of a solution of those communities? That's point number one. Second, if India and Indian Americans and India-US relationship remains on an upward trajectory, going back to Vedaji's point, how do we engage the next generation in that project? I think those are the two simple questions. I was going back to the question, what are the unmet needs we are solving for? Those are the two unmet needs we are solving for.
Khanderao, I would love to hear your perspective, because this is the challenge Khanderao and I and many of our leaders today are grappling with. How do we mobilize a generation of people to believe in America's potential and recognize that as Indian Americans we have so much to offer to this nation? How do we find one collective voice? And Khanderao, would love to hear your sentiments upon how you work through this dichotomy of thoughts to move forward, because we're not playing in a 4-year term. Trump will be long gone. We're going to play politics and advocacy over hopefully the next 20, 25 years.
So most of the Indian American first generation who came here, who mostly for their self-need, right, whether to build the wealth and do the startups and all that thing. And in the environment that we are in, we thought that all the policies and everything is fine. No need to be changed if you really look at it, right? We try to assimilate and try to do the best into that. When our people in this country, they're going, influence is growing, there are certain things that we see that we cannot stay or we cannot live in the isolation, right? We need to be engaged in the community. If you don't engage in Washington, D.C., what they say is that if you are not there on the table, then you are on a menu. So that's what we become, right? Because we have all these things, so many CEOs, so much wealth, and how much per capita income, how much is the education, and we kind of proudly say, and rightly so, that we are probably 4x times better than the average Americans. Now, look at it from that perspective. When you project over there, right, it's a different perspective. There is a tendency of a victimhood is creeping into the mainstream. That was not part of the American creed. American always in the meritocracy, capitalist thing, whosoever has the merit, whosoever has the contribution, better they can get into that. But there is some sort of, and that is where I think the engagement, lack of engagement from our community is coming up, which actually need to be getting. That is the awareness that we cannot thrive here, prosper here, be successful in our own kind of ivory towers. We need to be engaged in the community. Our Indian Americans are actually contributing a lot in terms of wealth. That also awareness need to be created. That every Indian American who get employed over here, he create probably 4x, 5x jobs. So there is a lack of awareness in the mainstream because of the propaganda that Indian Americans are taking out a job. Every entrepreneur like Muddu, I don't know how many Muddu you employed in when you accumulated that 800 million which you are yet to give to me, some part of it. but how many people employed? So that sort of 50 MNCs when like say all these CEOs and etc. So much kind of even the businesses, not only the startups or the public companies, even lot of people who started hotels, 7-Elevens, different type of businesses, they also employed the people. But that data is not available. That is not created to create the awareness that Indian Americans are not suckers in this economy. Right, but that can only happen when we are engaged and we are telling that, we are showing that, hey, this is what we are contributing back. That goes back to what Muddu said, is that what value that we bring to this country. Right. And that is something that we are already and that is the awareness that we are trying to create, and that we can only be the advocates. So unless we are engaged into that, if we are isolated, if we are making wealth, we are peaceful and all that thing, we can still be under attack. Doesn't mean that it's a physical attack. One way or another, we are actually getting victim of the policies. That is because we are not engaged, we are not coming out, and that is where we are mobilizing the people that come together, let's go to Washington DC, let's meet the elected official, bring out the facts, show that how we are actually contributing back and making the difference into.
So Khanderao, thank you on that. In American politics, there's a saying that you are most successful when you're perceived as a victim. Just think about that for a moment. For too long, I started this conversation by saying we are the model minority. But along that, we've never tapped into the resentment. And Trump has normalized being able to speak your mind. Unfortunately, in a democratic establishment, it was considered different because there was a cancel culture if you didn't proverbially agree with some of those things. But there is an agreement today that I've heard that the US-India partnership is consequential. I've also agreed that we have to have a tremendous hope for the future and to look at this as a glass half full versus half empty. And I think what we're also hearing is that we have to advocate. We have to tell our story. We have to get our children to believe in the potential, knowing very well that they're being brought up in a school system and a college education where a new generation of professors is teaching them to believe that America is an unfair country. So I'm going to come back and just leave you with one question and allow each one of you. Have we as a community failed to see what Bernie Sanders talked about? And I'm not trying to spew anything, but Bernie Sanders identified that there's a forgotten class in America, a class left behind in this wealth generation. Even Silicon Valley, we created oligarchs. We're sitting in a district that has a $5 trillion net worth. But we have communities that are being shuttered with coal towns being closed. Trump spoke to the forgotten class, the aspirations of a forgotten class. Two different solutions of how they wanted to solve what's wrong with America. So I'm going to leave you with this. Do you think that as a community we have failed to capture the sentiment of income inequality in America? And while we've aspired for the proverbial brass rail, have we failed to serve the communities that expect us, that as people who succeeded, to give back to our communities, to uplift, educate, and help them understand who we are, good Americans? So, Muddu.
Okay. So I want to first go back to something I wanted to debate with this. So you're jumping to a next question. You're going too fast for me. So, okay. So I think, look, there are a few things we are kind of debating it. Hopefully everybody will debate this more. We need to solve, what is the problem to solve? I think we have so many problems with this. My approach as an entrepreneur, focus and pick one problem. Right now the problem is, how do we appease India, US administration, figure out a solution to the problem? All other things will settle once you solve, like root of the problems. That's number one. Second, we are all debating here and sitting there, but what is missing here is the people who, our own fabric, our generation that Vinita ma'am talked about, they're not here. Why? There are no VCs here, no CEOs are here. Ask yourself that. So this generation is completely failed us, not our junior generation, our next generation. Our generation left us. Those guys are not part of this society. We are like sitting in a, like what she calls it, a sandwich. I call that a shitty sandwich. We are sitting there. This is a shitty sandwich. Our generation is a shitty sandwich people. Those guys are not helping us. So I want to be very clear. Let's not piss off on our junior generation or next generation. Our sandwich people, me and Khanderao talked. Nobody is here. Where is Vinod Koshla is here? Where are all those VCs are there? They are not participating here. They are not even involved here. They not even want to support the India policy maker of FIIDS organization. So first thing we need to do is we need to group ourselves in the organization. This community need to go. We need to increase the tent big enough to get our generation, whether they're whatever level they are in the segment. Everybody can contribute. Let's get that community organized fully. And FIIDS should have maybe chapters in each cities, maybe a Boston chapter like Sudhakar already talked about, or LA chapters, get all of them organized, decentralize it like Bitcoin and those blockchains do it. We got to figure out a solution to the problem. We have a problem. What is our problem? We are not doing a good job of marketing ourselves. We do not have a lobby. We don't know how to solve it. We are trying to go to a David versus Goliath fight with a small knife. So we are losers in this organization. So let's call ourselves saying that I am Muddu, I have a problem, and let's figure out how do we solve this problem. That is the problem we want to solve. Everything else we should stop debating it. We cannot defocus, guys. There are 20 other problems to talk about. That's why even though he asked me another question, I'm not interested in that question. I am a laser focused guy. I don't even register his question now. I only have one problem to solve. I am looking at, unless you solve that problem, everything else doesn't matter to me. Right? And to solve the problem, I'm saying that we as a team are a group and a community not engaged. That is the problem we have. Let's not worry about next generation, previous generations, etc. Let's talk about our generation and create enough funds to use that funds, donate it, lobby it, whether you go to 20 congressmen or 400 congressmen, doesn't matter. Right? That is the problem that I want to solve.
I love this discussion, and being told that you've ignored me is perfectly fine. I'm thick-skinned. I've been doing this for 40 years. Muddu, our next Washington Lobby Day is coming up. We're giving you 5 months.
You won't like me. I only focus on one problem.
Honestly, I'll tell you which members of Congress we want you to talk to. We arranged a meeting with Senator Risch, who is the head of the Senate Federal Relations Committee. I'll give you one-on-one time. It'll be laser-focused. We're going to talk about what we need. He's a Trump guy. I am going to Mar-a-Lago. Khanderao and I are going to. We're going to meet with Marco Rubio. We're going to meet with President Trump's inner orbit. We're meeting with Susie, his chief of staff. There is a dichotomy of a discussion. And I want you each to think about this for a moment. You may disagree with me. You may come back and say, Yogi's full of shit. But that's fine. But I'll tell you, this discussion and dialogue about our advocacy and our voice of the future and bringing our children along with us, some of us are going to be hitting the 60s and 70s, and biology and nature teaches us that life does come to an end. Will our children advocate for India even if we give them a laser-focused problem? I want Indian Americans to believe about the potential of our community just like we rallied around Silicon Valley Bank. And the Biden administration, you were on that call when we had 100 venture capitalists talk about that because our self-survival depended on it. That is the passion and the intensity of our hope and aspiration. And how our diaspora is perceived in this country has a direct correlation to how India is seen in the world. But Anurag,
so
I don't want to come in the middle of the path through dinner, but this is an important point, so I want the two of
I'll
you.
be quick. This is one thing that I've learned with my students at Stanford. I actually probe them through a question and I let them engage, and you learn a lot that way. So I'm going to ask a two-part question. You mentioned a name, Bernie Sanders. I'm going to mention another name, Mamdani. Yes. Okay? How many of you think that Mamdani had his finger on the right problems for New York community? Show of hands. How many thought that he had the right problem figured out? I'm going to raise my hands, actually. He had identified the right problems for his community. How many thought that his solution was right?
Wrong.
And I'm going to end with a thought. So I'm part of Seva International. We have a number of Seva team members here. FIIDS does remarkable work. We have a number of organizations which are already starting to think about what that solution looks like. which is better than what Mamdani is proposing. Seva works with the local communities. We have 48 chapters. Every chapter works with the local underserved communities, addresses the very problem that Mamdani is talking about. But we do this with volunteers. We do this with support of Indian American donors. We do this with support of local governments. We are bringing everybody together. There's a big tent that we have created, and we are not negative about it. We're not dividing the community. We are actually bringing everybody together to do that. So that's one piece of that solution. And that's a solution that young people can get on board with. We have 2,000 high school students every year who join Seva to work with us on that. So that's an example of how we can actually attract young people to that cause, but also attracts adults. Many of you are Seva volunteers in the room. So I feel that there is an approach that we can take that is not economically radical, and yet it addresses the underlying need that our society has. So that's my point.
Guys, good job. Before you guys go to Mar-a-Lago, take a golden Silicon Valley icon and golden Taj Mahal and give it to Mr. President Trump. That should be your job. And I'm donating if you want to. Let's collect a donation for that. Let's solve the problem with that.
By the way, Don Jr.'s son was at Wharton.
Huh?
Don was at Wharton. His roommate was a family called the Lodias. They're Trump partners in India. That's our backroom conversation. So what FIIDS does is we have people-to-people interactions. We interact with people who believe have an ear. And that is a nuance of advocacy. It's not a zero-sum game. But to your point, let's all help each other understand how to solve this collectively. We can't do it. We need the Muddus of the world, we need the Anurags of the world, we need each one of you in the room to allow us to build this over the next 25 years. Trump will be gone in 4 years. Is it a J.D. Vance or a Marco Rubio or a generation of Democratic progressives that are going to come back and seize the mantle? FIIDS has to engage at all levels. So Khanderao ji, this conversation, I believe, has helped people to see the struggle of the conversations we face, but how we will never give up, how we're going to continue to seize the moment. So I'll give you the closing comments because this has been your baby. You've nurtured some of us to believe in this, and we're going to take for the heavens and catch hell on the way down. But we need all of you to lift us up. We cannot do this without you.
I think Yogi has already summarized it, and I am now between this and the dinner. But definitely, just as a couple of things I would like to say that people need to see that how the influence is actually manifest. When there was this encampment happening in the campuses, Harvard and all that thing, we started that all this funding started getting disappeared, right? All this, and then definitely the university chairs started getting replaced. They had to resign. Even if you look at it, that I mentioned about the Heritage Foundation, which is a project 2025, one of the most powerful. Right now, it is in the huge controversy, is that Carl Sudhakar, he hosted a podcast with Nick Fuentes, who is an extreme right-wing, and Heritage Foundation's chair only supported it. He said that, not supported, he said that just provided a cover to Carl, saying that it's okay, he just gave that, we should not be into cancel culture, conservatives should work together and all that thing. And there is a huge turmoil to a degree that huge resignations happen, and even the chairs and all that thing, they have to be replaced. I'm just giving the example, one of the most prominent institution in United States on the right-wing side had to, within a week, just on a matter of a statement about, even Heritage is not involved over there. Someone interviews someone, Heritage chair just comments about that, and with that there is a meltdown over there. That is called the influence. That influence that community, Jewish community has built, right? That is the whole is about the anti-Semitism, because Nick is actually totally kind of he kind of denies the Holocaust. And with that, in such a kind of a backslash can happen to such a kind of a powerful institution that is called, and that is not because of one institution or one organization like FIIDS and all that thing. All these entrepreneurs, VCs, people at different levels, they are all united on one mission, one thinking. They may be separately doing all this activity. That is something, that phenomena that Indian Americans need to do that thing. We can do our own kind of a pursuit of happiness, American dreams, everything we can do. But when it comes to certain few things that we need to identify, they are not negotiable. And that is something that we need to come together and put our heart, our mind, our wealth behind that. So that is where I think this is just a FIIDS is the one mission, that to bring the people together, inspire the people, make sure that they understand what's happening. And coming back to this one, there is a lot of dynamics behind the scene that what Yogi mentioned, right? When all these things happening, that meeting the senator who is in charge of the Foreign Affairs Committee, discussing with the long-term US impact, is there any impact of this tariff on the long-term US-India relations and all that? How do we make sure that we navigate through all these things? There are definitely, there are different voices. There is a White House, I mean, those people who understand White House is the one thing, but Congress is the different, Senate is the different. So there are all this understanding that how it plays and how we fit into that is also important. That's where the strategy and advocacy comes into the picture. With this, I will stop.
Thank you so much. A big round of applause for our entrepreneur and Anurag Mairal, professor and a great friend of our community. Thank you so much. Khanderao, I think I'm going to pass this back to the MCs for this evening. And Harishi, please come along.